You are now.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You are now tuned in to the FuseBox Radio broadcast with DJ Fusion and John Judah.
You're as good as they say you are.
Syndicated worldwide to bring real black radio back to the masses.
All right, everybody, 1 2 1 2. What's going on? You're now in tune to another session of the syndicated worldwide FuseBox Radio broadcast, bringing the best of black radio and black media to the masses in different formats since 1998, from our foundation at Rutgers University Radio in New Jersey to the present internet world of podcasts, net radio, and more. Doing it up in 2021. We are recording on the first day of the new year, and of course one is always grateful to be here to be able to do this on multiple levels, but especially after last year and whatnot, on micro and macro levels, and also just again eternally grateful to be here. We're cooling on the DC Metro right now, and I'm glad to be able to get another show out to y'all. This is DJ Fusion on the mix and commentary, and on the side you got my bro who does the same. I'm going to have him go ahead and introduce himself to the masses.
Yes, indeedy, though, to the whole wide world. Yes, indeed, to all the ladies and all the soldiers. And yes, it is a Raw Black Hawk, a.k.a. Pretty Ricky McJiggets, a.k.a. the funky one. Much love to anyone. We're glad you came aboard. We're going to get it down. And the funk, we're going to get down. Yes, indeed, DJ Fusion is around. Good to be here, and we're loving it. What's the deal, Fusion?
The deal is, folks are doing pretty good. First and foremost, I'll do the promo runoff, and then we'll definitely get to talking about some things. It's kind of cool that we're starting off the new year in terms of talking about some things, old school and new and whatnot. First and foremost, for those who've been listening to us for a long time, we definitely appreciate y'all. For those of y'all who might have just discovered us maybe a few months, weeks ago, or might have just found us fighting the Googles, we appreciate you and all of that. You can always check out what's going on to FuseBox Radio broadcast family at our official website, FuseBoxRadio.com, FuseBoxRadio.com. You can also check out what goes on with us over at our blog site, which, you can still reach it at BlackRadiosBack.com. It'll route to our up-to-date site, the Black Radios Back 2.0 version with the FutonDun.com, TheFutondun.com, where besides upcoming writing and stuff, you also have weekly live stream broadcasts coming through to the mix. And we definitely got more programming that's going to be coming through there soon. You can literally just go to either or site, and we have the video box there to go and check us out. And if you want to check us out through your social media, all the social media is either FuseBox Radio, FuseBox Radio, or it is thefutondun.com. The Futon Dun, I should say. So twitch.tv/FuseBox Radio is for our folks who are on Twitch, where besides seeing us DJ, you'll probably see folks video gaming poorly within the next month or two. And whatnot. Instagram.com/FuseBox Radio, Twitter.com/FuseBox Radio, so forth and so on. For our Facebook folks, you can go to Facebook.com/FuseBox Radio Show. And, besides our shows and stuff we post up, we also have just random bits of news articles and things that we always find interesting for, peeps to check out and read and share, which we deeply appreciate all of y'all who follow us via any means. And lastly, with that, if you subscribe to the FuseBox Radio at your different podcast apps of choice and whatnot, if they have a rating system and you dig what we're doing, please definitely give us a rating that gets us to more people's ears, and then all these fancy algorithms and stuff in terms of how folks can go ahead and check us out. Also, too, we stream through Mixcloud Live, besides Twitch. So shout out to Mixcloud. They're one of the only folks right now who actually has live video streaming that also pays the artist as well through licensing. And no copyright strikes and stuff. So that's how we power our stuff through the Futon Dun and whatnot. So follow us on Mixcloud at mixcloud.com/FuseBox Radio. And with Mixcloud, you get your streaming and stuff, and that's definitely cool. We're going to probably put a lot more of the show's archives onto there because, unfortunately, I don't like the terminology hater, but it's the only terminology I can think of. Some haters have tried to copyright strike us via podcasting, and so far we've been pretty good with it, or whatever. And I know, seasons and things are changing, and we got people who are more insular with entertainment right now. But quite frankly, I don't like it, and, we've only really had some of our oldest shows struck, which I find is very interesting, but that's a rant for another day and time. But definitely go ahead and check us out on that. And, we're almost at 1,000 followers on Mixcloud, which I really appreciate. We're literally a 2-person independent media structure here, so for folks to check us out and be super dedicated via any of these means, but especially through something like that, we deeply appreciate y'all, you know what I mean? And with things at large, more stuff is to come. One of our graphic design homies is working for some new stuff with us. I'm not going to announce it right now, but people will definitely be checking that out later on and all of that. So you're going to be seeing some new design things and whatnot. You might see some gear coming down the mix soon. And, now we got the virtual entertainment going on. Hopefully when this, Rona calms down a little bit, we'll be back in the live mix more. We'll definitely let y'all know everything that's going on with that too. No. And we've had people requesting and asking about us doing video intros. We're working on that. We are working on that. I have the software and stuff. We just got to get a chance, probably for the next weekend or two, to go ahead and test stuff out before we get there. So y'all can see our pretty faces besides the pics we post up on the gram and all of that good stuff. And yeah, that's the big thing there. And lastly, again, I just got to really thank people for the past year. This year, by April, it'll be 23 years I've done the show and whatnot. Pretty much the show's like getting a master's degree by now or whatever. And for those who may be new, at the end of 2019, I was in a really, really bad car accident. My leg was jacked up. My knee was jacked up. So for a period of time, folks weren't able to record and do different things. On top of just some, not bad life changes, but some life changes happening for on both of our ends. And the fact that people were dedicated and, still checking out the old shows and posting things and, supporting the Futon Dun expansion and other stuff. I just really had to say I really appreciate folks because we're in the age right now where there's so much that people can go grasp onto and get into. So people taking out their time of their lives to check us out, I think is really a blessing. And this show has taken us to lots of different paths throughout the years and all of that. And God, I think this year for you will be, I'm about to say it's going to be about 17, 18 years.
What is that?
Because you got out around the end of 2003. About 17 years. No, 18 years now. 18 years will be this year. Damn.
No doubt.
Damn, I know your ass for a minute. No, seriously, but I mean, that's another blessing as well,
What was for me is that when I had met you, I had kind of realized that it's funny how time works or perception works or you accepting things, because I was around people who was doing that, and especially when I was at Howard, and people who were in fine arts, so it was like I didn't see it then. I mean, I might have done, hey, come do a little mix with, I didn't see it then. And then when I met you, it kind of clicked. I was like, oh, okay. And, that was at a different leg, a different aspect in my life at that point. But it just something was like, yeah, I think, and, but it wasn't necessarily for what it became. It was kind of more or less of me thinking about mixes and, I wasn't thinking about necessarily, if there's a thing of being influential, I wasn't thinking about it in that way. It was just more like, I was just more thinking about, I was just some stuff I wanted to air out, like musically, that I hadn't had avenue, like stuff that had been bottled up, and so that kind of gave it, I got my records out of storage, so I'm like, looking at them now. So I mean, there's just good vibrations and things and of that nature. So it's you know, it's all good. It's all good.
No doubt, no doubt. Like, you look at stuff like that. It's funny that you mentioned records. We came up in a period of time where everything was very transitional, right? Like, we went from CDs and vinyl, like in terms of like DJ promos, to, you know, the MP3 stage now, when people are trying to have you do the streaming services / DJ thing. It's not necessarily working as great yet, but because it's early. But like, you literally kind of have like archives of your life when you look at records and stuff, right? Especially when you're a DJ. I mean, I think if you're a music fan in general, that's, you know, your medium of choice, but especially when you're a DJ. And I bring this up to transition to some of the commentary parts we're going to get into in a minute, because I'm sure, you know, folks are aware as of broadcast time, Daniel DeMille, aka Zeblov X, aka MF Doom, transitioned earlier this year, but everybody just found out yesterday and whatnot, at the age of 49. Definitely prolific MC, definitely prolific producer, and I can definitely say that even if you might not necessarily been a fan of how he, you know, handled the craft of hip-hop and black music, definitely one of the best reinvention stories, I think, that's come out in quite some time. I bring that up just because one of the first hip-hop direct promo vinyls I ever got was from MF Doom for the Operation Doomsday album, the I Hear Voices Part 1 or whatever. And for me back in the day, besides the fact that it was like very, very early in my like DJing career, like maybe like literally maybe like my first year or so or whatever, I remember being kind of blown because it was like, it's this white label, right? And it didn't really necessarily have the direct stuff on it because, you know, back in the day, sometimes you would get white label promos too. But it only had the Doom mask on it. And, you know, folks like the Black Hawk and other people who've known me for quite some time know I've always been a comic book fan. Like, you know, I was yammering about Marvel shit or whatever as a teenager. Or, you know, young kid head to now. And I'm just there like, what is this with a Marvel MF Doom mask, you know what I mean? And this cat's calling himself MF Doom. That's kind of wild. And then I like listen to the joint, and I'm like, and to this day, it's one of those joints I still play a lot. I'm like, this production is crazy. This dude's like kind of rhyming off kilter, but you know, it's pretty dope. I'm really feeling it. You know, Operation Doomsday dropped later on, and so forth and so on. And as a person who was already a music head, you know, I had found out that homeboy was Zeblov X of KMD for like my generation. Besides folks, you know, listening to stuff like, you know, Peach Fuzz or whatever, folks might also know, you know, them in terms of being on the Gas Face single with Third Base. So I was up there like, this cat is still, you know, rhyming. Cause I didn't necessarily know at that time the saga behind KMD and why the Black Bastards album never dropped or whatever. They had Little Sambo hanging or whatever. That's one of the reasons why he didn't drop at that time through Elektra. And it was just, for me, I was just there like, this cat's kind of reinventing himself. For people who had like heard the Operation Doomsday joint, you know, like people like talk about comic book movies like it's nothing now, but it wasn't that way back in the day.
No doubt.
Or, you know, comic book media. Like this cat was like just going into it. I mean, he was going to it on his own vibe, like how people like had them little records back in the day that told, you know, the little stories or whatever. So he was like sampling that up with all this other type of things. And it was like, yo, you know, this is kind of crazy. And then a year or two later, back when they had CMJ music conferences in New York City, I ended up seeing him perform. And, you know, he did a bit of rhyming, you know, he did like the beat joints or whatever. And I was just there like, and this probably sounds like kind of goofy now, but I was there like, yo, this big black dude is really wearing an MF Doom mask and performing. And it just kind of blew me, but at the same time, like, this is dope that somebody has that ability to do that. Especially at that period of time, like if people like remember the mainstream hip hop vibe, then I think that was when people were trying to get more into like either the glossy gangster thing or, you know, the hardcore street thing, but there was always that renaissance of indie hip hop that people look at. And it's kind of funny seeing how people look at it now in comparison to back in the day, where it's like, to me, I was just like, this was fresh and new, you know. I was barely above mid-teenagerdom, you know, I'm doing the radio joints, I'm running around to different events and stuff in general, I'm hopping on the PATH train, New Jersey Transit, etc. And, you know, I'm just going to all this stuff, like, you know, when they had Black Lily, for example, at the different spots, when, you know, OK Player was doing that with Flo Brown and all the other folks who were performing. Like, when you're able to see, like, folks like Jill Scott and they perform for, like, 5 Bones in the city. type of era. I'm going to Nuyorican. I'm going to Bowery Poetry Club. SOB, CGBG, and all that, like, you know, and just, you know, random hole in the wall joints that ain't open right now to see different shows. So, you know, seeing Homeboy, you know, do that and, you know, make a whole ass career, and I'll even, you know, age myself a little bit more. I don't know if folks remember back in the day where, you know, independent videos were only on VHS. If it wasn't public access. That's one of the first time I saw Doom videos, because they had like a little screening joint. And another thing I went to, and they were showing all these independent videos or whatever. So like stuff like that just brings back those memories, and I think, you know, people associate, you know, popular culture with good memories. And Doom is one of those cats. And also the funny thing about Doom, and I was having a conversation with folks on Facebook yesterday when everybody, you know, found out the unfortunate news, because his wife ended up being the one who posted up the notification to everybody, was that you had a whole generation of cats who didn't know Doom from that period, but learned about Doom in the early 2000s through Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. Like the Boondocks cartoon Aaron McGruder had played different Doom stuff. I don't know how many people remember Cartoon Network's Adult Swim back in the day, but the commercials will always have all these little like independent hip hop interludes of beats and rhymes and stuff. And Doom was one of those like major joints in that too. And it was kind of funny because there's cats I know who are like in their late 20s, early 30s who were talking about, I didn't know shit about Doom till I like, you know, heard the Mouse and the Mask album that was, you know, cross promoted really heavy on Cartoon Network at that time. And whatever enough, like, you know, so you had that cat who through multiple generations, like we could literally be there like late 80s, early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, and to the stage where I think he might have got his most success in the past maybe 10, 15 years in terms of the public sphere. You wouldn't like know who this cat is, you know, type of steez, and him working with like, you know, an insane multitude of people. And I think that's should be something that should always be encouraging if you're just there like, damn, I ain't blowing up yet or whatever, that you keeping your creative spirit besides it keeping you together. You know, you never know when your success can come. And I, you know, think that's a dope thing. We live in the age of Google. Folks should definitely check out all the good joints that he's done. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is that I know Doom different than she does because, you know, I was living in the New York, New Jersey area when his first projects were coming out, when he wasn't Doom, and when they was you know, KMD or whatever. And I remember the videos, and they had the you know, they were in that religious organization. I forgot what they were. I think they were called Anstar, and they had the religious garb or whatever. And you know, there's a lot of alternate religions in the New York, New Jersey area that are, you know, a lot of black and black too. And but yeah, I just remember, you know, honestly, to keep it 100, I wasn't really feeling Homeboy in the beginning. You know, because, you know, he came out in an era that was so competitive. You know, I mean, KRS was at his height. Kane was at his height. L was still at his height. I mean, you know, Guru was still Guru was, you know, his contemporary would have been Guru in the sense of somebody that just came out. And to me, Guru was hot from beginning to end, you know, as a Boston cat. But I mean, you know, it was when he became Doom was when, you know, it kind of hit me all at once that this was a cat basically that, you know, I find myself like Doom in a way, in the sense of, you know, he experienced death, you know, with some people. I experienced, you know, death, not just one person, but a couple people, you know what I'm saying? So, and how that can be very dislodging, you know, and of perceptions and how things, you know, would maybe have naturally flown, gone or whatever. And so, you know, when I saw Homeboy in this new dispensation, this new testament of him, I was, you know, like, it was hard for me to not like him, you know, because it was like, you know, I mean, I know so many cats that's like, I mean, I know so many cats like that, like you, that didn't necessarily continue on. That's from that era. You know what I'm saying? That's from the pre-internet era of hip hop. You know, when hip hop stronghold was, you know, was basically, you know, New York, New Jersey. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it was, you know, I don't know. I was glad that, you know, one of those cats could, you know, was able to do that, and you know, because that to me represented something special. You know, that represented something that, you know, something from, you know, the generation that I'm familiar with. You know, they came up off Mr. Magic and Red Alert, and you know, Latin Rascals, and there's different cats who was doing mix sets back in the day on the radio. And Marley Marl, of course, Mr. Magic, and various even just underground cats, you know what I'm saying? And you know, how that sound, how there was a particular sound in the sense of, you know, there was, just with the stuff that they had. They, you know, a lot of early hip hop, they didn't do sampling. So, you know, it became into sampling later. So, you know, almost the way hip hop is now, what they call trap, a lot of early hip hop, not completely, but it was like that in the sense that there was no sample. So, you know, and you know, early hip hop was various. You know, it just didn't. It was much more family oriented in the sense of a record could be played and the mother and father could sit in the room. You know, and you know. But anyway, without going too much off or whatever. But now, definitely condolence to his peoples or whatever, and almost like Prodigy in the sense of kind of cut too short. I mean, most hip hop cats who, especially ones under 50 years old, you know what I'm saying, and he represents very much of cats who a lot of cats who made records then, you don't hear about them really making records and being popular now. You know, he had that thing, he made a record then, you know, that wasn't necessarily big outside of certain hip hop circles or New York or overseas. And so certain places overseas, you know, and then was able to come in this modern situation and shine like that, you know. I don't necessarily want to drag it on too long, but I feel bad in a sense because it was like, he had gone through a lot, and then, but things happen a certain way, and definitely, another soldier down, and you know what I'm saying? It in a way, it's inspiring because, you know what I'm saying, because we're in a lot of ways cut from the same boat of cloth. Of hip hop and the different ideas that hip hoppers were dealing with in their youth, and anything that was alternate was more or less for the sake of keeping somebody right and exact, and an attempt to shape one's behavior. Hip hop did that, religion did that. Without necessarily having to go to gangs, because the better choice, particularly for those of us who had good families, was more like hip hop, whether it was sports, fight training, or just music or the arts and sciences period. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt, and I definitely think that's a big impact. Everybody should get, if nothing else. Like, I know some people aren't going to be a certain level of hip hop head. You know what I mean, and that's cool, and that's totally fine. But I just always love the aspect of when, as you were just mentioning earlier, briefly, that there's cats who aren't doing anything anymore. Mm-hmm. They're not recording. They're not doing whatever for different life reasons, and Doom went through the entire situation. I know when, he lost his brother back in the day through the car accident. He lost Sub Rock, Even this past year too, he lost his son.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and which was like this, very unfortunate and all of that. So that brother went through the losses that, a bunch of us go through in life, you know what I mean? But something in him was still able to not just keep that creative spark for himself, but to, inspire and do stuff for others. Like, for cats who look at certain things, they might be that like, okay, I'm not necessarily the craziest about Doom. Without Doom, for some of these heads who are like a bit younger, you wouldn't have a Joey Badass, you would not have an Earl Sweatshirt, you would not have a Tyler the Creator, you wouldn't have necessarily maybe a No Name to a degree. You had cats like Drake who talked about that Doom was an influence, so, you had a whole generation of cats who caught on to Doom at a certain time frame. And were like, this is the shit. And I know there's a video that's out there that I saw where I think it was like from underground hip hop or whatever. I'll have to look it up and see if maybe I can put it in the show notes. But it shows like when Earl Sweatshirt and Tyler the Creator met Doom at a concert for the first time. They looked like little boys who were so happy to see somebody they looked up to giving them any props. Like they were gassed. Like when you go to a show and you see people who have genuine joy when they go to a show.
No doubt.
And see something like it's that type of thing. With side note, that's one of the things I miss about, hopefully when the corona to end soon and all that shit is that. Like just that genuine, oh my God, this dude who I've listened to so much, they inspired me, they talking to me to do an ABC. You're like, it's adorable. You know what I mean? But I think that's always the mark of an artist too. You know what I'm saying? Like I think stuff like that is dope, And he's worked with a whole bunch of different cats right to the end. Like I know he worked with I think he worked with Conway and the Machine recently. I know he did a whole collabo joint. I can't think of the dude's name on Griselda Records. I don't think it's Conway. I think it's another dude, but it's escaping my mind right now. But he's working for a lot of different cats, actually through a lot of different genres. Or whatever throughout the years, and
that genre that Doom represented the genre that Doom represented will be short of an act of God. That genre will be influencing from now on. It just will be in one way or another. It just he was just one aspect. I'm saying the genre. Word. So there was the cats that you can look up on the internet and find out who was that. And then there's the cats who you can't look up on the internet, or who you can't look up on the internet and find their name back then doing nothing. You might be able to find their name doing something, and that's like I said, I represent that genre. So that's what I'm saying. That genre gonna be around, and there's other jokers. You know what I'm saying? So it's a beautiful thing, it's like almost anything like that, that black people have been involved in that, we can go back thousands of years that once people who were very intimate with the arts and sciences, while they still were around, it still was vibrant, it was just when, that they passed away, and then the love for the arts and sciences passed away, is when the decay started. You know what I'm saying? But the true essence of healing music, of soul music, and just we kind of embody that. You know what I'm saying? And we definitely try to bring that to people, and and in one way, I want to say that music is black music, but not all black music, especially currently, represents healing music. You know what I'm saying? So, but I mean, whatever you get that from or whatever, but, but like I said, everybody likes, I guess, a comeback story. And I think, Homeboy, he basically encompassed that, and, I heard about it. I guess when I heard about it, I spoke to Mary about it this morning, and I was just like, because it's like Sean Price was not that long ago. Yeah. Prodigy was not that, you know what I'm saying? So we talking about, some of the best voices in the last 10 years, you know what I'm saying? That wasn't necessarily, mainstream or whatever. And so they all had their, separate stories or whatever. And, and those three, I would listen to those three, over most cats, you know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
most cats who are considered better than them. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, there's something about the voice, you know what I'm saying? There's some people who are more lyrical than them, but their voice doesn't resonate, you know what I'm saying? But
no doubt. Voice and that it factor joint, also, you know what I mean?
He did have the voice too. Not to cut you off, but he did have the voice that where it was kind of the same when he was young, but it evolved, almost like Prodigy's voice, where before he passes, that was almost that was one of the better voices out, and that was one of the best voices that they had. You know what I'm saying? You know, because the voice Rakim got now ain't the voice. You know. I mean, obviously he got older, but you see through certain people's careers how their voices has changed, especially if they've been in the game for a while. You know what I'm saying? And he had a good voice before he passed, and you know what I'm saying. And he was, you know, he spit out some of the occult, you know, information or whatever. So he was a brother that was into that. You know what I'm saying? But he had been into that from when I first knew about him. So he continued that aspect of his self-development, and at least he died knowing some information. He wasn't a regular nigga, you know. He was a regular nigga, and he was not a regular nigga. You know, he straddled the fence in that way where, you know, he could be that. You know what I'm saying? And wasn't being phony.
No doubt.
My older brother's like that very well. You know what I'm saying? And so I definitely know what that looks like, no doubt.
And side note on that end, like the dude was able to go into a whole bunch of subject matter, and none of it felt phony.
Yeah.
And it was relatable. And I think that's something that sometimes MCs tend to forget, because, I mean, when you're talking about, you know, the different types of, you know, spiritual, metaphysical aspect, like he was always that way since KMD. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, like, if you look at, you know, some of the joints he did in the latter era, especially, like, the J.J. Doom album and especially the Born Like This album. Like, those got into some stuff relatively heavy.
No doubt.
But it still bopped. Or you just had stuff on, like, different, you know, tracks or whatever. It was, like, almost like just tossed in, like how, you know, like you have a chef tossing just a little bit of seasoning. Like, it might not have been the entire joke, but you hear, so you just be like, wait a second, did that dude say so-and-so? Oh, all right, then. But then he, like, do, like, you know, then he talk about, you know, getting busy or, you know, smoking or, you know, smacking somebody up or doing whatever, or, you know, like just goofing, like, you know, like with, you know, the cartoon references or TV show references and a whole bunch of other stuff, you know what I mean? Like, I think one of the things, and I think that's something I personally just always like, I think about certain MCs, like, I like average dude rap to a degree. Or in other words, like, if you're talking to your peoples and you're comfortable with them, you talk about all kinds of things, right? Everything's not always super deep, everything's not always super political or super silly or super spiritual, whatever, but you might just be having a combo. You just hop back and forth between that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think he was really freaking good in that skill while, you know, having that hip hop vibe and, you know, swag that I think was going to be natural at the time frame that he came up in. And being able to continue that on as an older dude. You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting that you brought up the joint with, like, Sean Price and Prodigy and, you know, some of the other, you know, cats who transitioned lately. Most of these cats right now who are doing this, which is, you know, kind of scary, but also is, like, just interesting to look at, is that they're, like, age contemporaries to a degree. Like, maybe, you know, a few years older to a few years younger. Like, you know, the older some of these cats are, like, some of the cats might die in their 50s or whatever. Like, that's, like, my older cousins who are still here right now. You know what I mean? And then, you know, some cats are, like, literally people who are only, like, a few years older than me. Some cats who, you know, we performed with. And stuff, you know what I'm saying? Much less doing other joints, and bringing up all those three individuals, just on a real quick note, I think is interesting because during certain degrees, they did little bits of reinvention of themselves while growing as human beings, you know what I mean? Like, Sean Price would have always Sean Price. You know what I mean? Like, Prodigy, I mean, granted, you know, he was always had a namesake and so forth, but he got into rhyming about different types of shit throughout his recording career. Or whatever. So you had certain cats who knew Prodigy about rhyming about A, B, C, D, or E on a certain level. You know, cats who were just, you know, straight up on the, you know, super young head juvenile hell Prodigy with Mobb Deep. You know what I'm saying? And just kind of living through all of this is just a very interesting thing to see, and just seeing how while none of us are old, you know, who do this show.
No doubt.
In other words, nobody is like 50 and above and whatnot. At the same time, like, we've lived through multiple generations of hip-hop joints. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that's just a fascinating thing to look at. Like when I was mentioning earlier about having a convo with some cats on my Facebook. Like I know some of the cats on my Facebook were like are in their late 20s, early 30s, and they were talking about I ran into Doom at this time, while I ran into Doom at another period of time. Of
check this out though.
But,
I not to cut you off, Mary. I forgot another death, which to me, and I don't mean to sound funny, is more important than Doom. Ecstasy from Whodini passed. I
was actually going to transition into that next. I know we definitely hit up about Doom. Real quick side note: condolences and prayers to his family, friends, and fans.
I love Doom, and I'm not shitting on his name, but this was before Doom.
No doubt.
So this was like, see, that's why I had older brothers. So I was able to hear certain things that I might not have heard because they were checking it. And, my brother was a big Whodini fan or whatever. And, one of the first hip-hop records that I heard when, because we moved around a lot when I was young. Mm. And when we moved back into the tri-state area as kids, one of the first hip-hop records was a Whodini record, Haunted House of Rock. And that was on their first album. The album that had Friends on it is mistaken by most people to be their first album. No, that's not their first album. Their first album had the Haunted House of Rock on it. And, they had, I forgot, they had a crazy production squad that was running with them. Word. And I forgot who it was. I remember hearing.
I know you had Larry Smith at the time.
I know it was. I forgot the brother's name.
There's another kid's name I can't think of.
Anyway,
go ahead.
To me, they made some of the best hip hop records of all time, as far as I'm concerned. Because in the era it was Whodini, Run DMC, and Fat Boys were like the main ones before L came. So I made new mainstream groups rather. There were groups before them, of course, Cold Crush, Fantastic Five, Kumo D, Treacherous 3, Disco 4, Disco 3. Disco 3 was Fat Boys. But, so, I mean, hip-hop was, it was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, just the energy and everything, you know what I'm saying? I kind of got distracted, Fusion. What was I saying?
You're essentially just talking about Ecstasy's impact on
yeah.
And like in terms of like how you ran into him as a kid child.
To me, like, because of those groups or whatever, to me, Whodini was a standout. I mean, of course, I love Run DMC. Mm-hmm. That's just what it is. But Whodini had some of the better production on when they were going back and forth, I mean, on the albums, and because Run DMC's first album was going neck to neck with Whodini's second album. So, to me, I thought Whodini, those beats was better, and Run DMC had Rockbox, they had Suck MCs. Suck MCs is one of my favorite hip hop records of all time. Suck MCs and Rockbox it's like that. That's the way it is. Mm-hmm. Those were the main hits off that one. And, those are, Suck MCs is, like I said, one of my favorite. Whodini had Friends, which is, to me, one of my favorite hip hop records of all. That's probably one of the better. I mean, they had a song called Friends. That was a hit record. I mean, nobody does a song about friends no more. You know what I'm saying? It's either partying and bullshitting. It was about friends. And what did they have? Friends, they had, what was the other joint? 5 Minutes of Funk. And, and just I don't know. I mean, and now I think they lasted longer. Run DMC lasted longer than them. You know what I'm saying? Because after about, Whodini's second, I like their, I still was listening to them because I played, they made a rock record that I played every now and then. And I still run that record. I think that was on their second album. Because they really didn't go really past, excuse me. the second album was the one, whatever, and then what I just said was their second, was their third. So by their third album, that was it. Run DMC went further than that. And actually some of their better, because by the time Run DMC got to, I think, Raising Hell, I think that was probably a pinnacle. That's a pinnacle hip-hop work and a pinnacle work by them. But back to home, I was just giving, the aspect of who Whodini was going against and who they were there. Of course, there was the Fat Boys, too. And Fat Boys, they made about 4 or 5 albums. And their first 2 albums are classic, to me, gems, are just like, hip-hop 101, It just was a time when it was bubbly and fun, and Whodini was a part of that era. And I'm glad I was blessed to have kind of been able to see that, to have absorbed that, the records that only got played on airway in New York, that people got on cassettes, that if you don't know the name of the records, how you going to know to look for them? Unless you was a record digger or you trying to look on somewhere that got a cassette playing or whatever, or you know what I'm saying? So it's a forgotten history of certain hip hop, in the sense of certain records that was being played, and artists that whatever who didn't whatever. Just I remember going to shows and cats, whatever. There was crews there, so what happened to those crews, or me going with these cats. I was running as a DJ with cats sometimes back in the day. So the Zipsies, whatever, we might be going to certain places, or some fight break out, But that era, people was wearing sheepskin coats in the wintertime because hip hop was New York, so it was winter oriented. Bombers and shell toes and night. I mean, just. That era that came in, because I'm not trying to turn people off. Well, you shouldn't be turned off as hip hop regardless of where it's from, especially early foundational hip hop. Is that in my life we were just moving back from because we lived in the South for a while. My family was my father's from, so we moved back to New Jersey around that time, and so I was hidden. I thank God that I was able to get it, at that time and absorb that. And, niggas from New York wasn't come over to Jersey starting no trouble, especially the part of Jersey that I was around, like Newark, East Orange, and, just Jersey in general, Elizabeth, Jersey City, Jersey in general, Trenton, Jersey held its own. Outsiders who came in had family there. There wasn't niggas coming in pushing, So it was really another borough in New York because it had basically the same radio stations as the main radio stations that New York had. Maybe they didn't have the college stations that Mr. Magic came up on, which Mr. Magic was the first person to play hip hop on a radio station in the United States, but he originally did it on a radio, on college radio. Then he went to WBLS, which was I think one at the time one of few black-owned radio stations in New York, and was formerly owned by Malcolm X's lawyer, Percy Sutton. So hip hop is really an offshoot of really the civil rights movement in a lot of ways. Especially with because before Public Enemy, Melly Mel was spitting conscious stuff. So I can say that with Whodini because Whodini was in that era with them. Melly Mel representing Harlem and Uptown, and representing that, and and the Bronx, I guess. So but it was all hip hop. So and I don't know, just God bless everybody who remembers that, who was there, who because I know that this death is it's going to affect cats a little. It's going to affect hip hop heads, period, of whatever age group. But then there's going to be an age thing where it's going to be a different emotion because there were people who were there, and there are 2 levels of there. They're there in the sense of they was in the trenches with those dudes You know what I'm saying? And there's there in the sense I was in that era and I was listening to it and I was an artist. You know, and I might not have been out performing, but I was learning my craft as a kid. You know what I'm saying? So I was doing it. You know what I'm saying? So it's you know, I just realized that was back to back. You know what I'm saying? Because I heard Ecstasy the other day, then I heard Doom, even though Doom had died earlier than what they broadcasted, but since they've been saying it, it was like back to back. And I'm like, and what's funny is it seems like most of the cats that's dying is from back east. The majority of hip-hop cats were passing are from back east. You know what I'm saying? And whether they're dying or whether they're being killed. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep it 100, you know. I mean, from Tupac to now, the majority of rap niggas have been from back east. You know, and Tupac is from back east. He was adopted by the West Coast. Tupac from the Bronx. So, you know, I'm not saying that there's a conspiracy. I'm just saying it's just a coincidence that, you know, the majority have been that, you know. But anyway, big up to, you know, I mean, big shout out to everybody that love hip hop and is definitely, you know, feeling, you know, the death of, you know, of these brothers and you know, Ecstasy or whatever, and you know, that's how Ecstasy. Doom is foundational hip hop, but Doom is really an offshot of what Ecstasy and what the other cats in, you know, Bronx, Harlem, and was doing, you know, and as Ecstasy was an offshot of that, but this is Doom was an offshot of Ecstasy. Ecstasy was an offshot of us, but they, you know, that was foundational in the sense of what people heard and they could play on cassette or whatever, and the stuff that they were saying. That, I mean, they had an impact, you know,
no doubt,
you know, especially on people like me who have a soul. You know, those records, I can still listen to those records. You know, people. Oh, I remember when I was listening to, you live in the come, living in the past. Energy doesn't die. Energy doesn't die. Your perception changes.
I can definitely agree with that. I mean, and also a dope record is a dope record. You know what I mean? Like, I for some reason, and that's a whole other conversation for another day. I'll just be very brief. For some reason, people act like, you know, there's an expiration date on dope music, especially black music, especially black American music. And I've never, you know, liked that vibe. That's one of the reasons why I had brought up the joint with Doom and, you know, the younger cats earlier with Tyler the Creator and all them, because I'm just there like any other time you have cats like, well, you know, old folks are using the young people. I'm like, these young cats were thrilled to see an older dude acknowledge them and doing their thing and who was still performing. You know what I mean? Because it's a continuation. Like the joint with Ecstasy. Besides the fact that, you know, definitely one of the more distinct voices in hip hop. Period. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like that. Like, I always like the more big booming voice of hip hop. That's just how I am, or whatever. And I definitely think that, you know, he always had that. But, you know, like if you go somewhere and, you know, you just see somebody with joy just rhyming or whatever when they hear a joint, like Whodini always had that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like they always had that with, you know, people, you know, do the rap parts and the sing parts or whatever. And off of that alone, that's big impact besides, you know, being a natural, you know, early hip hop foundation cat or whatever, especially in terms of like White Widows making that turn from being, you know, more underground to, you know, more mainstream, because it still wasn't like Whodini was like super mainstream. But, you know, if you were like listening to anything that was remotely called black radio or urban radio, you were going to hear Whodini. Old school channel, new school channel, whatever, right up to this day. Or you're going to hear the joints with Whodini that have been sampled. Like you mentioned Friends. Friends is literally one of the most sampled hip hop joints out. Yeah,
the drums from that.
You know,
I do be hearing that drum.
Speaking of Doom sampled that on the MF Food album.
Yeah, I be hearing that drums and songs that don't be R&B or hip hop. I'm like, that's Friend drums. I heard them drums as a child. Like the actual, not necessarily they duplicated, they sampled it and just added something on top of it. I'm like, nah, I know that sound. I heard that sound as a child.
You know what I mean? So, like, you have, like, that type of thing that goes on where there's always some kind of continuation with stuff. So when you see, you know, a cat like Ecstasy, who, when I'm speaking of like older cousin age, I'm like literally talking about early to mid 50s. You know, that brother, you know, transitioned at 56. So you look at certain stuff that way where, like, you know, you might have been a little kid hanging with the older person. And being like, yo, they so cool, this, that, and the third. Like, and there were hip hop cats when I was reading articles about when he passed away, who were talking, you know, about that joint. Like, or, you know, it's kind of funny seeing certain MCs talking about things, especially during like that 80s period, where I saw a joint where, like, you know, Chuck D was talking about, you know, like, I went to the Def Jam tour and I was crazy nervous or whatever, you know. Dougie Fresh and Ecstasy were, you know, giving me tips in terms of how to do stuff or whatever while performing live, you know what I mean? You know, having guys like Q-Tip talk about, you know, Homeboy being the impact and stuff like that. It's always a continuation. I think that's something that we should always appreciate when some of these folks pass. And speaking of, because unfortunately we had like almost like a triumvirate of information over like the past week to week and a half. Definitely rest in peace and prayers, condolences, and more to family, friends, and fans of not just Doom and Ecstasy, but also of Adolfo Quiñones, aka Shabba-Doo.
Oh yeah,
who
yeah,
passed
yeah,
away.
yeah.
He transitioned at 65 and whatnot, and you know, people know him on certain levels or whatever. Like, I'm definitely one of those folks who knew Homeboy of, you know, doing his joint with Breaking or whatever. Like, you know, I'm a little younger, so I, you know, caught on to the movie steez or whatever later on, but he was like, he danced in a ton of stuff besides doing choreography for people later on and whatnot. Like, you know, he did his thing in Chicago, and then, you know, later got, you know, West Coastal or whatever. And he was on Soul Train back in the day. People can actually see the clips of him on Soul Train or whatever via YouTube. I didn't know that he was like on Broadway for a minute. Like, he did some shit with Bette Midler dancing back in the 70s. Yeah, or whatever. He toured with Madonna as a primary dancer during the Who's That Girl tour. Like, you know, when Madonna was Madonna. He did that. He did choreography on some of her videos. He did stuff with Lionel Richie, Luther Vandross. Something I didn't know until, you know, I read, you know, his obituary was he choreographed 3 6 Mafia's performances at the 2006 Academy Awards. Really? So, in other words, that cat was working right up to the end. He also directed some documentaries and stuff. He later became a directing fellow with the American Film Institute. So he wrote a musical, Rave Dancing to a Different Beat. He appeared in the 2017 documentary, which is actually really good, Kings of Crenshaw. If folks can go on ahead and check that out. And again, you know, I think everybody's seen the clip of him doing his thing and Breaking as Ozone along with Boogaloo Shrimp and whatnot, using Breaking and, you know, Breaking to, like how everybody says Electric Boogaloo and shit or whatever. That's because of, you know, that title.
Electric Boogaloo. Yeah. If I'm correct, Electric
also, shout out to my
Boogaloo
Afro-Latinos. That brother was Afro-Latino, you know what I mean? Mom's African-American, and father was Puerto Rican.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to say that. But what I wanted to say is that I came into contact with him before, obviously, Fusion did. And my early take into hip-hop was, you know, my last take is vocals. But my early take into hip-hop was dancing and then DJing. Well, excuse me, was graffiti, drawing, and dancing. So when, my 3 early movies was Breaking, Wild Style, and basically Breaking and Wild Style were, you know, when I saw those 2 movies, it's never really been the same since. I remember the day, and something just was different, you know. And but Shabba-Doo, because I was in on the b-boy, can pop a little bit. My brother was more on the pop, and I was the b-boy end of it. And but because I would watch my brother and also watch other different cats, I got into popping also. But he was an example. He was Alfonso Rivero was in that era too, but he was younger. And but these are kind of cats who are getting it in and dancers and but definitely rest in peace to homeboy, and that's a part of really that era on like what we were talking about. I was talking about Whodini, but that's just on the dance end of it. So that's there are definitely cats who are passing from that era. I believe sooner than they should. I believe you have two roads. You do what you're supposed to do road, and the road that you do in the other road. And I think that we kind of straddle the fence a lot of times. You know what I'm saying? And because unless it's a special situation with one's incarnation where they didn't have to be here that long, but I believe people are supposed to be around here longer than 49 years old, 56 years old. Maybe not all the time, but it's just what type of emotions, type of thoughts are we carrying? You know what I'm saying? And that's a battle. That weighs on us. What are we eating? What are we drinking? You know what I'm saying? And all this shit plays into it because you got Dionne Warwick, sister, still around making it happen. You know what I'm saying? So it's like in America. So I mean, some people can, some people can't. You know what I'm saying? Sister is living in South Orange, New Jersey. A lot of fly niggas came through the oranges, and that I know personally. Yeah, sister, so I mean, it can, I don't know, or like, there's people like Bette Midler, she's still doing it, or Carol Burnett. There's people that like are still vibrant in a way, and Jane Fonda, or there's black R&B people who just can't be heard because the radios are not necessarily formatted that way. You know what I'm saying? Or older artists in general of multiple genres. You know what I'm saying? So, and we're it's almost more internet now based now anyway. So, but we're arts and sciences. So, these people were part of people that were part of that format, that puzzle, that tapestry, that those stars in the sky, that people were illuminated by, you know what I'm saying? Influenced, you felt good after you engaged to listen to, because I know after when my father passed, music played a big part on as far as the healing, and of course, there was a good collection of masculine heterosexual energy around, and that was or at least on that, and of course there was women and feminine energy that was there also, but in the sense for the man brotherhood thing during that time, that was but the music was I would have to say central in a lot of ways, and it was always meant to be that way. Music was meant to be, we maybe talk up some bullshit on it, but the rhythms and vibrations was a celebration, of us being in tune with that energy, that earth spirit energy, dancing and doing music, the drum, the first instrument, then, the voice, the dance, that was all part of the celebration of, of being in tune with the life force, you know what I'm saying? The man, the woman, togetherness, a flow of energy that's not like, against one another, you know what I'm saying? We don't always see that today, but, in the sense of the way it's supposed to be. But yeah, no doubt though, you know what I'm saying?
I think
it's like the end of it's not the end of an era, but it just seems like you realize that time is going past because that which was whatever is just starting to, and like I said, I think it's sooner than it's supposed to be, as far as I'm concerned. But we're going through it, and it's going to be all right though.
No doubt. And it's definitely one of those things I think you brought up that was interesting because I think that sometimes life and people can be disappointing. Music usually isn't, at least on its own. Yeah. Or whatever. I mean, I definitely know. I mean, hell, I was just mentioning this year will be 23 years I've done the show. You get to a certain point in life, you ain't doing shit you don't want to do if you don't got to do it.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And certain things, that might have, been cool with you when you were younger, might not be cool with you now. Music has always been cool for me ever since I was a teeny kid. You know what I'm saying? I just happened to come up, as a hip hop generation, and on top of being around, family members listen to all other kinds of music as well. And whatnot. So when I talk about, feeling how things have a certain continuation, it's like, it was the type of joint I literally heard in my home, you know what I mean? Like, I can still say my mom still listens to a certain radio station every Sunday at a certain time. You know what I mean? That does blues and R&B. When I was, being a younger hip hop head, even then I was just there like, I hear some of these joints I think I heard from this song my folks played. In this tune, you know what I mean? Whether it's, beat, vibe, sample, etc., and we still see that continuing on with other artists. So while, some of these artists, unfortunately, have transitioned to, whatever the next is in terms of next plane, etc., their impact is still there and people can still check out their art and get joy from it. Because the artist always gives a bit of themselves when they do their art, regardless of the art, and that's beyond music. So, these cats did that and people, had experienced joy at a time where it came out or experienced joy later or still experiencing that joy when they do that. So, we kind of, which actually is kind of bugged out thinking about it. We kind of went through different generational cats, even though they were necessarily terribly far apart from age. Like, Shabba-Doo was the oldest. That brother was 65 when he transitioned. Doom was 49 and, Ecstasy was like, early 50s. But just seeing like how that type of joint works or whatever, and in a way, at certain parts of their life, they've intersected with how they influenced each other. I just think, is a very interesting thing. And while, of course there's sadness when that type of, joint happens, because, if anybody had an impact in your life and they go away, you're going to feel some sadness. But, there should be joy, experienced as well, that people were able to experience that through heads, and folks can still go forth and continue doing so. And on some levels, maybe a little easier because of how the technology is. You know what I'm saying? At this time. So, again, definitely prayers, condolences, and strength and support to, friends, family, fans, and so forth of all of those fellas. And just of all the folks who, transitioned in terms of the creative fields at large in 2020, man. Like, it was a lot. Like, I think 2016 felt like a lot when all that was going down. But there's something about 2020, and maybe because, like, on a macro level, shit was kind of bugged out on multiple ends. It was like, dang, yo, like, this is kind of wild, but
I forgot.
We still keep moving on.
I forgot to comment. I'm not gonna get deep into it, but not everybody listens to rock. But I do like rock also, at least the stuff from the '60s, '70s, and '80s, and some of the stuff in the '90s. But Eddie Van Halen had passed, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, no doubt,
from
definitely.
The group Van Halen, and they had been around from the '70s or whatever. Eddie Van Halen was the guitar player on Beat It, Michael Jackson. That guitar solo was Eddie Van Halen. And, I liked it in the sense of the musicianship because, Eddie Van Halen at that time was one of the better guitar players, at least in rock, and, I mean, when that was, they were big during that era of Whodini and early school, that's early hip hop. They had some big albums during that time. So there was a lot of music. There's a lot of people from that era who were definitely transitioned, who were just in this alternate eras. And
no doubt.
So no doubt.
Definitely respect to him.
Say that again.
Now, I was saying, definitely respect to him. You know what I mean? And quick side note, like that cat was a little more deeper on certain things than I knew about until he transitioned. Like, I like Van Halen and stuff. But I mean, that was not necessarily the hardest core of rock hits, but I always respected what, Homeboy did. And, you mentioned his guitar solo on Beat It. That cat was also a mixed Asian cat back in the day, so he got a lot of shit during the 80 period when they were out. You know, I mean, I look at him, I could kind of tell like now, but I never necessarily paid attention back in the day. Like, you know, you look at some folks, you're just there like, you're interesting looking. There might be something going on. Like, I think that cat was like partially Indonesian or whatever, but he never denied it or whatever. And you know, there's like stuff where he talked about like how people gave them a lot of shit in general when, you know, those cats came to the States or whatever, and when they're the early part of their career or whatnot. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, you know, my folks who are, you know, from that part of Asia knew a bit more about that than me. I mean, it's like how we know about black stuff, right? Because that's just part of, you know, more of our interculture or whatever. But, you know, that cat was legendary on a few ones. Definitely RIP to him. And side note, like, we're going to get into one or two other things. And, you know, this is definitely stuff we had to reflect on 2020. Rest in peace to Alex Trebek, man. Real talk.
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever. Like, I think all of us don't know anybody else who's done Jeopardy but Alex Trebek. You know what I mean? Throughout our lives. And, you know, homeboy from Canada or whatever, of course, hosted Jeopardy. You know, people have seen him in tons of pop culture stuff or whatever. Had history of being an extremely good-natured dude, very generous or whatever. And also, I think his impact is cool because it was like, he's one of those cats, like, being smart on TV was cool. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be a dick about it, but, you know, having intellectual curiosity is cool. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, across the board, that cat had a very, you know, important impact with doing that and putting things out there on that level. And I think for a bunch of folks, like, you know, if it wasn't you, it might have been your fam or whatever who watched Jeopardy at a certain period of time.
No doubt.
You know, during the day or whatever. So, you know, he's one of those cats, like, you know, he was an older dude or whatever, you know, of course, you know, F cancer, you know. He ended up, I think, passing via pancreatic cancer or whatever this year. He lived for a little bit long after he had his terminal diagnosis. I think he lived over a year or two after he had that. But
and what I didn't realize, I was watching one of these little side channels that...
he did other talk shows beforehand, too.
He did some stuff from the 70s.
Yeah.
He's from the 70s. He's like, the Jeopardy came later. I remember seeing something where his hair was longer. I said, oh, okay, then this is when he was younger. I said, oh, okay, now I see that he had a history of being a part of whatever. But I forgot the name of the show, but it was definitely the 70s. I could tell the way the film looked and the way the haircuts and the way the clothes were.
Yeah, but, I forget it too because like my mom was like watching that joint one day.
Yeah,
and I was just there like, is that Alex Trebek? I mean, he was like clearly like he had like little like a white man fro going on.
Yeah.
And mustache and shit. Like, I can't think of the name of the show worth a damn. I was like, damn, Alex been... Yeah. I mean, when you see some of these folks, you think they've been in the game for a minute. But I was like, oh, you've been in the game for a minute. Damn, you know?
Yeah.
Like, when they had boxy cars and shit as, you know, prizes. Yeah. Era Alex Trebek, you know? But, yeah, definitely, you know, RIP to him or whatever. I mean, in general, when people do creative stuff, I'm always going to, you know, feel and appreciate... But I think when you have people who have a good-natured vibe throughout what they do, that definitely has to be acknowledged. So I wanted to toss that out there real quick because you made me think about that when you talked about Van Halen. Let's see here. 2020, I know for a lot of people, was a rough year on personal and big levels. I hope that everybody does have a better 2021 on multiple ends. You know, folks go, you know, toward their goals and dreams, you know, definitely be tied into their loved ones, friends, fam, etc. 2020 was not the best year, but not the worst for me. I mean, 2019. I think a lot of people had the 2019 I had personally in 2020. Like, that's not saying that, you know, going through some of that stuff was easy, but I personally can't say it's a particular way. But I know a lot of people, you know, went through some shit this year. So I definitely, you know, hope folks have a better year on those levels. I'm glad for the folks who said that, you know, biz that we did help them out a bit. That's always good, you know, and whatnot. Like, even if it's just, you know, you listen to, you know, us talk like we've been doing and or the music for a few hours, that helps you out through the day, definitely do so. Life is going to have its struggles, but I think, you know, we all, you know, can, you know, go forth and make it. Definitely keep the good-natured folks in your life as long as you can. Appreciate those folks as long as you can. And just going to touch base on a few other quick things before we go on ahead and get into FuseBox Radio 2021 and whatnot heavy. Let's see here. Speaking of friends and stuff, I saw this interesting article about 2020 in regard to how people kind of had more insular lives or whatever because of Corona happening and whatnot. And it talked about how some people were like, you might walk out of this next year or two with less friends, or less of what you consider friends. And this is through the CBC. And part of it was just because of, how people are looking at the health situation or whatever. But part of it is because this might be the first time that people are reflecting on who really their friends are. You know what I mean? And how deep their ties are. And I think that's something that happens when you age in general. But I think it's always interesting when, you kind of had that rubber meets the road period. And you see where stuff is. Like, doesn't necessarily mean somebody's a bad person, but, maybe your interactions were surface. You might be there like, okay, I'm not going to write you off, but I'm not going to put you on my deep hierarchy of friendship. You know what I mean? And, yeah, it like this went into stuff like that a bit, and that's one of those things I think that, if you have, like friend to me is a term that people use very lightly, unfortunately.
Yes, indeed.
And, if you have like 5 to 10 friends, you have a plethora of friends. That doesn't mean acquaintances or whatever else are bad. You know what I'm saying? Not at all. But at the same time, like, you might not be able to provide some shit for somebody right now, or you down on your luck or whatever, and that person is still with you. And they ain't blood related. Like, that's some real shit. And I think that...
Let me just say something real quick. I want you to continue, but I was just thinking about that in reference to, like, you talking about friends. There are some people who lay down. You lay down who you want to lay down with, but there's some people who lay down with people who they should not fall asleep around. Because like when you think about it, you would, when you're asleep and you're really asleep, and there's somebody around you that you're not sure that they really care about you. I just had some experiences in the last 10 years, and that let me realize that, who you have around you is particularly when moments get intimate and maybe people can fall asleep. It's important that, you understand who you have around you, and that if you are going to have somebody around you that you don't necessarily care about on a certain level, is that you don't necessarily need to be asleep around them. Because people run through shit. They do, male or female, So I just made me think about that, and to have around you somebody, obviously not everybody is going to have a deep connection with everybody they sleep with. But I'm just saying, but in the sense of having people around you that, because I learned from just being around certain people's animals, you know what I'm saying? If I'm an animal. I don't have animals now, but I grew up with animals, and that, if you had to be a special person, if my animal don't like you, you had to be very special because they have a sensor that human beings don't have. So they're picking up on something. Like, because I met this lady recently, and one of her cats didn't like the dude that she was fucking. Turned out that it turned out that he was on some scheming shit to try to get through some money. So it was funny how the cat picked up on it, and she was oblivious, giving head, fucking, sucking, all that. And then the cat was like, nah, I ain't fucking with this nigga. Every time you come in the house, bolt into the next room, wasn't fucking with him. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we don't a lot of times understand, you do what you want to do, but have a certain caliber of person around. Because they have bad intentions and, bad intentions of not telling you about, STDs, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Whether they gonna look through your shit or, piss and shit on your shit. In other words, like, fuck your shit up, unawares to you, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? And, but that comes back to what she was saying in the sense of the having a person that basically who you could trust. You're not going to be able to trust anybody 100%, but just to have something like that, and then, and most of the people that I know like that are people I knew from when I was a child. I only knew people who are like that are females. Dudes don't make friends the same way when they're older the heterosexual dudes don't make friends the same way they did when they were young. You know, they can, but it's normally when they're older, it's more business oriented. It's not completely about whether they like one another. It's kind of about almost a connection, you know, almost. It could be friend, but it's definitely more, you know, I'm more, you know, I'm like, you know, I don't really hang out with, you know, most of the people I hang out now are females now. But I mean, because I came up, my homeboy, you know, but everybody's moved around the country. You know, some people are overseas, you know what I'm saying? So, of course, you're older and, you know, people could have family obligations the older they get and da-da-da-da, you know. So, you know, friends become almost a thing a lot of times, especially if you're not living in the same state as them, that you know through telecommunication, through the phone or through the internet, you know, because they're handling their business somewhere else now. And, you know what I'm saying, because most of my brothers in California, one of my closest homeboys is in North Carolina. You know, I got one of my other closest homeboys is doing music. Like one of my homeboys from when I first started DJing, homeboys, he's over in the UK. So it's like cats is everywhere. So, that's just a part of, I guess, when individuals get older, individuals have different paths to do different things. And, you know, so to have somebody who's a friend that's close that you can trust, that's a good thing. And I know people who have that, but people that I can, I don't have any dude that there's certain dudes that I can trust where I'm at,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say maybe about two, you know what I'm saying? And, but trust is a funny thing and friends is a funny thing, you know what I'm saying? That's why I see, a lot of people are alone. A lot of people are alone for various reasons, but I don't know. But everything is going to be all right. It's more about the perception that everything is okay, and that at the end of the day, if you're not lying to yourself and giving off negative energy and hiding the fact that you are giving off negative, if you're being straight up, and I think the life force works in a certain way, you know what I'm saying? And, I don't know. There's so many avenues you can jump through off that. And I'm just trying to obviously cut it short because we've been on here for a while, but we definitely glad the audience and, you know what I'm saying? And, because I think when you talk about arts, sciences and people dying, that kind of touches, in combination, that kind of touches a soft spot in people. Because, you grew off this stuff. You know what I'm saying? You were influenced by it, or you were influenced by the era. It wasn't just when you hear that, the people talking grandstand about, they're not talking about that person, they're talking about the era.
No
because
doubt.
the era influenced them, and they came up in that era. Like I said, it was from top to bottom. It was magnetic. It was electric. It was all type of energy at one time. It was a renaissance. It was kind of a renaissance in music and dance. Breaking and b-boying and popping, locking was coming. So there was a lot of stuff going on between the late 70s and the early 90s. You know what I'm saying? Which is clearly the better time. I'm glad that I had consciousness during that time, and and that's basically the time. Basically, everybody we've been talking about was kind of showing their stuff or whatever, and it's timeless, to say the least.
No doubt. And I thought that article, and there was also one in the Washington Post that talked about male friendships, more specifically, in terms of like how some cats had to start reassessing, those type of friendships when they weren't necessarily able to, do stuff like always go out or whatever, and getting more service. But I think just in general, like, the world is very interesting because it's more insular than ever because of the current health situation on certain levels. But it's also more interconnected because we got the technology to be in touch with certain people. Yeah. Or we have, or more people have access to it. Of course, unfortunately, everybody doesn't have certain things. Like, we're on the East Coast around urban, suburban areas. We got access to more certain stuff that, some cats, unfortunately, might be rural, don't have, or whatever else. Yeah. But, I think when you look at those, if you live in a home family situation, if you didn't already know something about somebody, you probably know something about them this past year.
Mm.
You know what I mean? You know, good, bad, and different. Like, I've known people whose marriages have gotten stronger than ever. I know people who got straight up divorced. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, unfortunately, you know, some things, you know, you go through a life of a certain routine, right? Certain parts of people's routine aren't here anymore. You're around each other more. You know what I mean? Whether, you know, it's just y'all as a couple or y'all with children of different ages or whatever, right? Because you don't got, like, your kids going to school necessarily, per se, depending on where you're at the moment. Like, here, I think we still got, at the moment, we still got, what the hell they call that? Virtual learning. Or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And where I live in Maryland. You got folks who, you know, they might have not have already been in a great situation, but going to work at least was something that they could do to distract themselves. Some people weren't able to do that. They might have had to work from home, or they might not, unfortunately, have employment at the moment, depending on how certain stuff is. You know what I'm saying? Some folks who always leaned on going to the bar, the club, or whatever to unwind. A lot of places that's not happening right now. Some places it is. But a lot of places that's not happening right now, you know what I mean? You are getting to know a person probably on a deeper level than you might have known beforehand, you know? And for some people, those were good situations. For some, it was bad. And for people who already weren't in great situations, because everybody, unfortunately, doesn't have a safe home to be to, you know?
No doubt.
And I definitely feel very bad for those individuals. Some folks had things get to another end. So I think you learn a lot about relationship type of stuff at large, just in terms of y'all being around each other a bunch, and also in regards to just really seeing where shit is at, you know what I mean? And when you get a chance to reach out to people, who you reach out to and so forth, because I mean, you know, everybody ain't gonna be having everything pop off lovely in a pandemic, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to catch feelings that I'm not always hearing from certain people all the time. But what I do hear from my peoples, you know, if we can reconnect the way we've been, it's all good. You know, because we're all going through different life stresses and so forth. And I think people, at least, because, you know, let's be honest, certain things aren't going to get back to what we perceive as normal until maybe spring or fall of this year. Whether you look at it in terms of, you know, control of the medical things or whatever, and also in terms of people wanting to have stuff be open and have less risk. It's not going to get to a certain point. What lessons are we going to learn from this?
It's going to be a whole year go past.
I mean, truth be told, from different things, you know, besides what I've observed, and, you know, we were talking like earlier today, like there's folks I know who do, you know, certain medical things or whatever. I think like spring is very enthusiastic. Like, fall might be the earliest, or whatever.
I think,
you know what I'm saying?
I think this thing is a psychological fuck to a lot of people, and they're going to be thrown off. So I don't think it'll be back normal within people's own minds and within the society in general's minds until at least a whole nother year. At least. Because people are paranoid about something. People are paranoid about something that they're being told about. You know, a virus doesn't attach itself to a certain type of body, period. And that's the type of body when individuals put certain things in, put the right things in. You know, put the right nutrients in, and, of course, have the right proper perceptions and thoughts and emotions. You know, it doesn't happen. So, you know, it's more.
And then on top of that, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm about to say, and then on top of the aspect of, like, besides what people have in their own house, we got to learn how people do stuff on the outside, right? Because, I mean, that's a whole other conversation I think we'll get into on another show or whatever. But in terms of, here's the basic things that you could do to at least try to reduce something. Because let's be honest, sometimes life is just fucking unfair. You may get something, you may not get something. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, if you are willfully not doing the basic things to try to reduce certain stuff, you're learning a lot about people on that end too. You know what I mean? Because I'll be very short on this end. Because like for me, let's say like the entire wearing a face mask to go to a store. Like that's been happening in Maryland since like April or whatever. DC Metro, at least since around that time. Like even if you feel the mask only does so much, if it makes somebody else feel better, what is the harm? What is the harm in that? Because if we want to keep it all the way live, and I am not an anti-science person, I'm like, I think it's weird that you want to like fuss and be ready to, fist fight somebody at the stove if they just want you to wear a mask while you in line, but you ready to line up and get a vaccine. I don't understand how that works. You know what I'm saying? And, that to me is just the weirdest shit in the world, where you're just there like, I'm a protest by not wearing a mask and not washing my hands. Shouldn't be washing your fucking hands in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's wild to me to see that, just in terms of making somebody else feel better. Like, that should be a community thing. Y'all should want to feel okay, or as okay as you can in a particular situation. I definitely have seen quite a few things on that end too, but I think if you already haven't learned certain stuff about people, you definitely have learned over this past year. You probably will throughout this upcoming year. I just think, like I said beforehand, hold on to those people who are good-natured and dope tight. If you have new people who come into your life and they're that way, embrace that blessing. For those who have definitely been riding with you for a long time, embrace that blessing. If you are blessed to have good family and friends, definitely hold on to those folks.
No
you know
doubt.
what I'm saying? Like, and Lord knows with this accident, like, I definitely know who has my fucking back. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't like I didn't know certain things beforehand, but it got reinforced even more afterwards. And, I hope that people learn this, even if they don't have to go through certain things. I've known a few folks who gotten different levels of COVID or whatever. Of different ages and stuff, like mostly older, but even like some people who are like age contemporaries or whatever, some people just had, the flu-like joint they got through. Some folks, if you look at them stereotypically and they healthy as shit, some of those cats, almost caught it. And maybe it's not because of the virus itself. We got to remember that we still got a public health disparity thing here. You probably have an equal amount of people dying of the public health disparity in this country, at least, as much as the disease itself. But that's, again, a whole other country for another day. We just got to look at, let's do the best for ourselves, and I think that within itself, by just being a kind person, does, the best for others. Because as we've seen throughout 2020, like, a lot of stuff is very clear if it wasn't already right now. Like, you don't got to be an intellectual to be like, certain shit is fucked up. You know what I mean? You don't got to be like a politics nerd or whatever type of nerd to be like, yo, these rich motherfuckers don't want you to get a stimulus check of any kind. They just want you to work and die. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of how you politically label yourself. That should be seen as fucked up. Washing your hands shouldn't be seen as fucked up. You know what I mean? But we also got to look at the aspect that some people didn't let go of certain bad societal things in their lives. Maybe until now. And while I think we can exercise compassion and things, at the same time, we can't be stupid.
No.
I'm like, on a certain level, I feel sorry for cats who are just there, like, everything I knew about America was wrong. I'm also a black American woman, so I'm just here like, we done been told you that shit, but okay. But, I hope we all get, I know we all get all this, and everything better. And, lastly, just a real quick, few notes of some dope pop cultural stuff I want to recommend. Definitely watch, Netflix's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It is very good. Chadwick Boseman, did a spectacular performance as his last performance. And it's kind of wild seeing him doing that last performance too. But Glenn Thurman does his thing. Viola Davis definitely does her thing. And whatnot, and all the actors and actresses did. It's a relatively short. It's barely about like maybe an hour 30 or so. So you can sit down and watch that joint. Of course, the Mandalorian. If folks didn't already.
I wanted to make a comment on that because I had never spoken about it. I had finally started seeing the Mandalorian the last time that we did an intro, and I'm a Star Wars. I'm day one Star Wars. So I was Star Wars as a child. So what's funny about The Mandalorian is that was the character as a child that I liked. Of course, after Luke and, Luke, Chewie, Han, and, the main characters. But after the main character was the Mandalorian figure as a child. And so when I'm seeing this as an adult, I'm like, okay, I remember the Boba Fett character. I had the little things as a kid, the toys as a kid or whatever. And so I finally got to check it out and saw both seasons. I thought of course, the last season finale, the rescue, when they brought, it was genius.
No doubt.
They brought Luke back. Because I didn't assume it was Luke. I thought it was somebody else or whatever. And then when I saw that, I was like, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make sense for, well, let me not say it like that. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think it's a good idea to cut out people from that era in this, and then on whatever level, and I heard, I just thought that was a good look, Lucasfilms, Filoni, and all the guys that are involved in, putting that together. I think it's a good work. I think it was good to get Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers, of course, to me, Carl Weathers was in one of the better drama movies of all times, and that's Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
And
shout out to
Carl
Giancarlo
Weathers
Esposito real quick as well.
Yeah, definitely big up to Carl Esposito. I just definitely want to give up Carl Weathers, because Carl Weathers, he was with Harrison Ford and Force 10 and Navarone in the 60s. So he predates most of the people on the set. And he was in Rocky, so, nobody on set has a movie like Rocky.
True.
Only people, or maybe people who are part of the Star Wars thing. But as far as everybody else, nobody has that. At least amongst the men. So, and the Mandalorian, of course, my man Giancarlo Esposito, of course, representing Brooklyn, New York. He's in there doing his thing or whatever. And I think, the whole thing, everybody, I like the female warriors. I think,
mm-hmm.
I'm loving them. You know what I'm saying? And I just think it was a good project. I give thumbs up to everybody in the Lucasfilms, and I think they're doing I'm day one,
mm-hmm.
And I think that, there's a lot of people that, whatever, but, it definitely gets a stamp of approval from me. I didn't see it until I got Disney Plus the other day, and I was like, okay, I see what the, and of course having the Baby Yoda. That was, what's going to be funny is how they're going to pull it off without the Baby Yoda.
Yeah. I'm curious how season 3,
really?
which has been greenlit, is going. I'm curious about how that's going to roll.
I at first, because before I saw it, I was like, how are they doing this? And then when I saw it, I was like, nah, it was, there was so much that I saw in it that I can't say. It's because of time or whatever, but it just reminded me of some people that I know. And but nah, definitely, everybody, if you haven't seen Mandalorian, that should be something you should check out.
No doubt. And, John's typically more of a hardcore Star Wars fan than I am. Like, I like Star Wars. John is Star Wars. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but, I'm definitely hardcore. Definitely.
You know what I mean? But The Mandalorian, to me, at its best core, is a space western. You know what I mean? Just to keep it short. And I think they do an excellent job with that. All the actors and actresses on there are excellent. For people who have not seen the Clone Wars cartoon, shout out to Rosario Dawson for being Ahsoka Tano. And they brought her into the series in a different way or whatever, as an older chick or whatever during a particular period of time. For people real quick with Clone Wars, she was actually one of those folks who had rolled with Anakin when he was young. If people see the cartoon, I think that's actually on Disney Plus or whatever. I think you would like it. There's certain seasons that aren't dope, but I think you would like it. But side note, like how they brought her in, I thought was really, really dope. And if, people have seen the other movies in terms of them being there, like, oh, wait a second, you're one of those so-and-so-and-sos. From back in the day, how, the little Baby Yoda Grogu joint recognized her or whatever. Like when she said his name and all the other type of shit, like that shit was dope. On top of, the Luke appearance. Like I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
So I was already into it. I'm just there like, I was just there like, oh, so y'all are tying ties on multiple ways and timelines. Yeah. So
that was perfect. Them putting that in there. That was perfect. I don't think that
bringing Boba Fett back in the mix or whatever. That shit was cool.
Than that, you know what I'm saying? And just the way that last scene from the time Luke came on until they recognized that this was the Grogu had to go, and just that scene, and then the Warriors were just sitting there watching as they were going away. That scene
that was fire.
That was shit. I was like, I said that just the emotion. They went from just like terror to this, you know what I'm saying, and then to that roller coaster of emotion that was there. That was good. I was impressed with that.
Like Disney Plus was Disney Plus was something I was like, this is cool, but I didn't necessarily get till later on, like when the first season of Mandalorian dropped. But Man, like they're going hard, man, with this Star Wars and Marvel content, because WandaVision drops in 2 weeks. That's going to be crazy. Let's see here. The Pixar Soul movie for people who like cartoons. I liked it. I think it was a very, very nice flick. Or whatever. And shout out to Jamie Foxx and all the folks who were tied in with that joint. I think it was a really nice little movie that people can go ahead and check out. But you got the Marvel What If series is dropping soon. They're gonna have that Boba Fett spinoff. You know what I mean? Yeah, like I don't know if people remember like the end credit joint or whatever. That's actually gonna end up being a spinoff of the joint. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting and whatnot. And and also quick side note, Disney Plus has this these mini documentary joints or whatever they touch based on different parts of Marvel or whatever. And they got a joint that was on the Japanese Spider-Man series. And I know people might have like seen like the memes or whatever, Japanese Spider-Man joint or whatever, but that shit is kind of fly. If you want to go ahead and peep and check that joint out and just see, how people did the interpretation of the character over there. And how certain stuff worked. And also too, one other quick recommendation before we get out and boogie. Actually too, the new season of Big Mouth is on Netflix. People like, kind of bugged out cartoons with heart. That joint is on there, and I think that season was really good. Just for the not to give stuff away, but just for the Missy arc alone, who's like the mixed black girl in the series. That arc is excellent to me. I think they did an astounding job. And if people know Big Mouth, like I said, it has a little bit of like outrageousness to it, but it actually touches base on some like kind of really sincere shit. Like if you were like growing up as a teenager or whatever. And all I'm going to say is look for the Code Switch episode. That shit is wild. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think mad black folks are going to eyeball that joint and be dying on multiple levels when they check that out. And also there's a Japanese series called Alice in Borderland for people who like sci-fi type of joints, like kind of semi-dystopian joints. That was an unexpected watch for me, but that is really, 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 really good. If folks want to check that out, like essentially real short summation. It's like these three kind of misfits dudes are like just chilling like in Japan one day, and then all of a sudden one day they like had to go, they're like running away from the cops or whatever. They go into this room, all of a sudden the power goes out. But when they come back out when the power's out, there's nobody in the town. But there's signs talking about you got to come over to this particular building and play these games so you can live longer or whatever. And just seeing the way these cats interact with each other and the other people who are still remaining in the town who don't know what's going on, because I don't really want to give away the ending at this juncture. But it is really, really good, and like the directioning and stuff is excellent, and it's supposedly based off of an anime or whatever, but it's all live action. But they pull off some wild shit in there. So if you like action, sci-fi type of joints, like they got dubs, so you don't gotta like read subtitles if you don't want to or whatever. But it's like about 40-something minute episodes. It's really good, and certain things on there are actually really touching when you see what happens to some of these characters. But definitely go ahead and check that out. And we're gonna probably, I think even maybe one day we need to sit down and talk about the Mandalorian just as a separate show, because I think we're both are really big fans of it. I think there's stuff that you've seen in it that I might not have seen, and vice versa. And that'll be cool or whatever. But yeah, just wanted to recommend some cool joint to eyeball if you haven't already done that for in 2020 for the 2021. Definitely glad to be able to sit back and record today. It's a little chilly in this corner of the East Coast and whatnot, but that means it's the perfect time to sit down and get some things done and all of that. And you got your Sunday sessions with the Futon Dun, thefutondun.com, 2 to 3 p.m. live. You got your replays that are going to be going on throughout the week and whatnot. Folks might actually get on a little later today, depending on people's mode or whatever, or on Saturday maybe a little early. Maybe get a tribute mix or something. I gotta see what mood people are in. FuseBoxRadio.com. You can subscribe to the radio show that way. You can see our virtual events and, hopefully sooner than later, live events happening. History of the show, how to submit music, show archives, of course. etc., etc. Join us on all of our social media, either at FuseBox Radio or the Futon Dun at the end. Just search it, you'll find it, or just hop on your Googles and you'll find us.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
More pretty pictures of us will be up soon.
For checking us out, and we definitely want you to come back again. We very much appreciate it. We love that you gave us audience, and we're going to be going.
No doubt. And just lastly, as we always say, you don't got to love and agree with everything that we say, but the fact that, you listened in and it might have sparked conversation for you and inspired thought and so forth means that we've done quality, independent radio and media at large, especially black media and radio. And we want to be able to go on and continue that. Spring 2021 will be 23 years of the show. It's going to be really crazy that in 2024 it'll be 25 years the show's got done. I already had some folks like, what are y'all doing? I'm like, I got no idea, yo. Living, and then we'll see, what happens from there. We probably will definitely do some type of celebrating
keeping it lovely and funky, always pretty, never ugly. We're glad that you joined. We love thee.
Indeedy. FuseBoxRadio.com, thefutondun.com. Subscribe, watch, and enjoy. Recommend us to, your peeps if they already don't know, how folks do already. And we always love and appreciate y'all for being a part of this vibe and checking us out. And for some of y'all, man, as I saw on my Facebook earlier, on the Born Day, literally have been rocking with us for quite some time. Like, some folks have literally been rocking with heads since WRSU, which, blows my fucking mind. And even just seeing some people just there, I've been listening 10 plus years. I'm like, what? What the hell? You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know if people know, and I'll be real short about this. Neither of us originally went on this path.
No doubt.
But whether you want to believe in, your deity, your choice, your universe, etc., they brought us onto this path,
No doubt.
And again, I just love and appreciate that we're able to do what we do, and people like and respect what we do. So, yeah, man, we're going to get into some things. FuseBoxRadio.com, thefutondun.com.
Yes, indeed.
DJ Fusion.
We the flyest niggas in creation. Yes, indeed. FuseBox Radio out.
You can listen to the FuseBox Radio broadcast via iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Podcast Addict, and your other favorite podcast players. Check out the FuseBox Radio's official website for our latest episodes, events, and more at FuseBoxRadioOnline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook at Facebook.com/FuseBox Radio Show, Twitter at Twitter.com/FuseBox Radio, and Instagram at Instagram.com/FuseBox Radio. Feel free to contact us at FuseBoxRadio@gmail.com to submit music for airplay consideration,